Hello everyone, this is Dan from USMX Football here. Today we're going to be discussing the PSG 1 Arsenal 0 result from the Champions League semi-final first leg yesterday. I have pulled up here the stats and also the lineups. But before we get into that, I thought I'd also pull up the lineups from that first result that they had back in October. Was it October? Sorry. Back in October. I have that pulled up as well, just so we can compare the differences in both teams. And I kind of wanted to start there before we got into the result yesterday. I think the biggest change, if you look at both teams, starting with PSG at least, if you look at the midfield, they actually had Zaire Emery, who came on at the end for João Neves, but they had Fabian Ruiz on the bench at that time. Now, my only guess is that they were still kind of tinkering. Luis Enrique was still tinkering with how he wanted the midfield exactly to work together. I think the fact that Zaire Emery has been there for a while and that he's been like that utility player, he's been the Camavinga for this team where, if they need him to play right back, can squeeze there, play him in the midfield, can squeeze there. So I think that's why they kind of just had him in that Arsenal game. I don't know if Fabian Ruiz at the time was coming back from an injury or something, but now, that midfield is so settled and they all press together so well that that was a big change for PSG. The defense was exactly the same back then, and in the attack they had Kang-in Lee at striker and Barcola. Before, obviously, they had Kvara and Dembele. He wasn't even on the bench. So he's probably injured or suspended at that time. So I think those three, Kvara for Barcola, who also would come on off the bench, Kang Lee, who I think was on the bench the whole time. Yeah, he was on the bench the whole time. And Warren for Fabian those are pretty significant changes in my opinion, because those three players all kind of turned out to be the big difference makers. Kvara assisted Dembele, and Fabian Ruiz was just all over the field. With Vitinha and Joao, obviously, they all pressed together so well, but just pivotal, those three. So that was a big changes for them. At least going over to Arsenal now. The back line, with the exception of Calafiori and Gabriel Magalhaes, who would have Kiwior and Miles Lewis-Skelly in for those positions. And then in the midfield, I think the biggest miss actually was right here. Thomas Partey for Odegaard and Kai Havertz for... Would it be Kai Havertz for Merino? Yeah, obviously. He's been playing striker. And they lined up with the 4-4-2 on that day. And I think not only, and we had obviously Kiwior coming off the bench. Oh, interesting. Kiwior, Merino, and Lewis-Skelly, the three who'd all kind of feature. And Gabriel Jesus, who would come on. But he's injured all the time, so you can't rely on him. So I think, contrasting those lineups with what we saw yesterday, I think PSG is so much, they have three big, important players back. No, not back, but integrated into this team that has really made them into, one of the best teams in the world. And Arsenal, I think Partey was a big miss. People are... I don't know if you guys saw the memes yesterday with Lee Judges yelling at Robbie Lyle, telling him, hey, I want MLS into this midfield, maybe for Merino. Rice switches over. Or maybe Merino was just... You know what? I don't know what Uncle Judge was trying to say, but he was screaming at Robbie that he wanted Lewis-Skelly in this midfield somewhere, and I totally agree. I think if you have Lewis-Skelly, Partey, and Rice in that midfield, that you're just getting so much more cohesion, but also energy. I think Merino, he's a big guy, he presses well, but he doesn't have the same energy as those other guys. And I think, obviously you have to move him into the middle, and then off the right you can have Martinelli or Trossard, or I'm sorry, off the left you can have Martinelli or Trossard, and I guess we just have to deal with Marino at striker. That's the best we got. I say we, but I'm not an Arsenal fan, but there you go. In terms of, I think Nwaneri can do a job off the bench. I don't know if that's, ideally who you want. And with Ben White coming back, I think that Timber is flexible enough to where with Lewis Skelly coming into the midfield that you can put Timber over here, Ben White right there at right back, and there you go. So enough of that. Let's go over to the actual these right here so we can kind of discuss how the game was played, at least in my opinion. So I think the biggest change that we saw, even though PSG has a 4-3-3, it doesn't exactly play like that, because anyone who's watched Dembele long enough knows that he was a winger. And Luis Enrique has kind of just found this role for him at striker that works, but he is not by any means a conventional number 9 running into the box, winning headers. No. That's not his job. I think, and this is very much like a modern role that he's doing. I mean, maybe we've seen, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, other strikers that we've seen kind of do this role. I'm trying to think, maybe like a false 9 Messi at Barca was doing something similar. But really, that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head. Maybe Roberto Firmino at Liverpool, kind of. And you'll kind of see where I'm going with this. But Dembele in this game, so we'll move Arsenal's attackers further up, because, this is kind of where they were at. Dembele in this game, a traditional number... we'll get these arrows out of here. A traditional number 9 would kind of be occupying this area, in between the center backs, dropping off, to help link up play where available, and facilitate runs in behind for his wingers. But I think what we saw yesterday was just very the culmination, I suppose, of Luis Enrique's work with Dembele, in that instead of having him in between these center backs constantly trying to find space or pressing them or stretching that defense, what he had him more so doing was up here, kind of dropping him behind, leaving he kind of was swapped him at halftime for Doué, but he kind of had him further back here, pressing more the midfielders. Odegaard had, you saw the memes yesterday. If you type in Odegaard right now on Twitter, they are flaming him. But Dembele was occupying more of this role, deeper in here in the midfield. And what that would cause to happen is that Saliba and Kiwior are kind of like, there's not much for us to do back there. I can kind of, help over here with Kvara, and Kiwior do the same. But then you leave this big open gap for Dembele to either run into, link up with these guys over on the wings, and exploit. And I think it's just such an awkward setup for not only Arsenal, but just a lot of teams to defend, because then you look at the midfield of PSG, and it's also a really awkward midfield because, first of all, they're all absolutely brilliant on the ball. You can't afford any of these guys to have it for too long, because they'll just leave it with this, with Fabian. He's going to find an insane ball or run from the front three, or the two midfielders making a late run. And on top of that, you have creativity in all of them and hard work, non-stop running. So they're all moving together as a unit. You're never finding these guys isolated. Oh, it's just Vitinha over here alone helping. No, it's always going to be not too far from him. If Trossard's trying to link up with Saka over here, and say Nuno Mendes is caught all the way up here, you will have Fabian Ruiz, Vitinha, and then not too far off, Joao, just trying to, just be part of that structure. And I think that's something Luis Enrique has masterminded very well. So yeah, I mean, going back to what I was talking about here is that because it was so awkward for Arsenal to kind of get a hold on how to defend against them, I think that's where we saw that the first goal come in of, you know, it was just so quick and so fast that Kvara gets this ball, passes it in Dembele and hits it first time. And it came off the post, so it's like literally the perfect shot. Impossible for Raya to save, but, you know, it's just such a difficult system to adapt to, PSG's attack in midfield. And I think that's why we saw that goal come in early for them against Arsenal. In terms of what Barcola, Ramos, and Warren did, I think Ramos offered like that much more conventional 9 attack for PSG to kind of build off of. So you would see at times they could leave him isolated up top with Kiwi or Saliba and just have him fight it off, launch a ball up there. I think it was Marquinhos who sent that ball from like half the way line, pinged it to Ramos. And he had that one-on-one shot with Raya, who, I mean, look, everyone's giving him stick for, you know, kind of toe punching it, but it hit the post. He got a shot off on target. Can't really hate him. Yeah, I think I would have liked him to trouble the goalie maybe. But beggars can't be choosers. I think it was still a good shot. And I think it was just trying to catch Raya, catch him off guard. So I don't even think it was that bad. But Ramos did good. Offers a completely different dynamic in attack. So if Arsenal score a goal and PSG are having trouble breaking them down, I can totally see Luis Enrique doing something like this. Ramos there, Dembele, the exact same midfield. I think he's going to keep that midfield. And then just maybe dropping off a center back or something, to be honest. Or maybe just having 3, but I think having that, if you're chasing a game, those 4 guys in attack, I mean, yeah, you struggle to find 4. Ramos, he's not the most elite striker, but he's still pretty good. You struggle to find 4 guys who can unlock a defense better than these 4. So don't be surprised if, PSG's trailing, they throw on this to try and break that Arsenal lock. In terms of what Arsenal can do, I mean, if I'm being honest, I think PSG is going to go through. So, However, understanding that Nuno Mendes and Hakimi are so attacking oriented, that's probably your best bet, is to try and find and exploit the space in behind, because as good as Pacho and Marquinhos are, they're not perfect. They're not elite. They're pretty good, but I wouldn't say they're, these defenders that, when put in these situations, 10 out of 10 times they're going to shut it down. I don't know if, even Maldini could do that, but especially with the quality of Saka, Trossard, Martinelli, like, you can find some space in behind. However, I think the bigger problem is Donnarumma. That guy had an excellent game yesterday. So did Raya, but I was having conversations with my friends before saying, are we forgetting that Donnarumma is literally top 5 goalies in the world, if not top 3, and he's a big game player? He's haunting Bukayo Saka all throughout his career, so, I think Arsenal, and especially more so than anything, set pieces, they got to get a goal off a set piece if they're going to go through this. Yeah, they just have to. That's supposed to be your game. And aside from like those weird runs offside during set pieces, I didn't really see Arsenal troubling PSG off a set piece, because when they would launch in those balls, I was like, yeah, it looks maybe effective, but as soon as the ball leaves the free kick taker's boot, as soon as it leaves his foot, like, all your guys chasing the ball are offside, Arsenal. And that's what I saw when that goal went in. I'm like, oh, he's miles off. Especially with the automated offside, you're not going to get away with that. So Arsenal's got to really force those set pieces, get the ball to Martinelli and Saka. And if you can't, get a good chance, just force a corner. You got to spam those corners. I think that's something that, because Arsenal's not used to being in these like deep tournament runs, they're not too familiar with. But, you got to win however you can. It's 90 minutes. You spam crosses. If that's your game, you get as many crosses, free kicks as you can muster, and you just spam those in. You get Saka just fouling, a foul magnet. Same with Martinelli. Long ball runs in behind. Last man, Marquinhos, Hakimi have to tackle him. That type of stuff is what's going to get you goals, but also results over at Paris. So that's been my analysis. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to be doing one for the game today against Barca and Inter, so stay tuned for that tomorrow. And I hope you guys enjoyed. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.